Hey, I thought I'd pop in here all ghetto iDub style to make a quick disclaimer before this video begins because I feel like it's an important thing to mention. This video is not intended to send harassment to Oli London or anyone else mentioned at any point within this video. This video is intended to bring light to a topic and allow you to cultivate your opinions on that topic based on the information shared within this video. Now, I personally may not believe in the existence of something like transracial or may believe that the concept of it is quite insensitive and discriminatory. However, you can hold your own view and I'm simply not going to go against you for that. I'm happy to hear your education comments where you teach me that I'm wrong if you feel like that's the thing you need to do. And basically, I'm just trying to say that this video is my own opinion and not intended to incite hatred in any way. I want that to be made very clear. But before I actually delve into the topic at hand today and give you all the facts for this video, I'd like to take a few seconds of your time to explain who I am and the type of content I produce. Now, I'm HarleyTBS. I'm what would be considered a coffee channel, which is the equivalent of what's called a tea channel, but without all the added bullshit and the fucking pointless stories that no one cares about. So today I'm going to bring you the hard facts on this whole situation, and if that sounds like something you'd be interested in for future videos, feel free to consider subscribing. I'm aiming for 50,000 subs by the end of the year. You can also check out my other social media and donation links down below, and with that being said, let's get right into it. But as a quick recap, for those that aren't aware of the recent situation, Oli London is a viral TikToker, YouTuber, influencer with millions of following on social media based on the fact that they had viral videos in the past. They're also now a model, and quite recently they came out as non-binary, which I'm proud of them for. However, that's not the issue that I'm holding here with this video. If you don't know, I'm very supportive of everyone in the trans community and the non-binary community. However, this is a different issue, as Oli London recently came out for being transracial. Now, they tried to change their physical appearance to look more like their favorite K-pop star, Jimin, and this brings on a boundless amount of problems with this situation, as this situation is not only nothing like being transgender, but also, this situation stereotypes and discriminates and undermines the discrimination that multiple different minorities experience daily, trying to share the ideal that you can change your physical appearance to match the race, heritage, and appearance of people from different cultures without understanding how harmful that implicit effect can be on those cultures, while simultaneously misusing a term to actively harm those communities. Now, if you don't know what I mean, I'll explain to you. Oli London recently released a video that I'll play now to you where they explain how they came out as transracial.
Because I identify as Korean, that's just my culture, that's my home country, that's exactly how I look now. And I also identify as Jimin, that's my Korean name. But not only that, I know it's a little bit confusing for some people. Nobody's ever come out as Jimin or Korean, but this is something that you guys know if you've followed my journey for the last 8 years. I've really struggled with identity issues.
Now, one of the first issues I took with Oli London's video here where they announced their transition is the fact that they conflate looking Korean, or in their words, looking Korean, to actually being born to a Korean heritage, being born from Korean parents, and living through Korean culture, as that simply is not something that Oli London has experienced, and by definition, to be Korean, Oli London would have had to have been born from Korean descending parents, which Oli London was not. Oli London has changed their appearance to look more Korean, which in itself is incredibly insensitive. To change your eyes or anything else to look more Korean seems very disrespectful, as firstly, that isn't an accurate representation of many Korean people, but simultaneously, Oli London tries to justify it based on the fact that according to Oli London, a lot of Koreans change themselves to look more Western, which isn't the same as identifying as a Western person, and by definition, they wouldn't be discriminating or changing anything to be insensitive. They change themselves to look more attractive in their eyes, which is not the same as changing themselves to be a different culture. Simultaneously, recently I've noticed a lot of people have tried to conflate this situation with Oli London to the situation where people often regarded transgender as not being a real thing, or actively discriminated against trans people for a long time for coming out about who they are, saying that their identity wasn't real. However, this comparison is by definition inaccurate and by definition completely wholly wrong. Now, I've seen this be used as a justification for a lot of people harassing Oli London or harassing trans people or demeaning trans people recently. A lot of the replies to Oli London's posts are mocking trans people or saying that because of how Oli London is acting, it means that trans identities are less valid, which simply is not this situation that we're dealing with. As by definition from the UK government, Gender is a social construction relating to behaviors and attributes based on labels of masculinity and femininity. Gender identity is a personal, internal perception of oneself, and so the gender category someone identifies with may not match the sex they were assigned at birth, where an individual may see themselves as a man, a woman as having no gender, or as having a non-binary gender, where people identify as somewhere on spectrum between man and woman. That is not the same as race, as race is defined as a grouping of humans based on shared physical or social qualities into categories generally viewed as distinct by society. The term was used to refer to speakers of a common language and then to denote national affiliations. By the 17th century, the term began to refer to physical traits. What those definitions mean is, while your gender can differ from your sex and your physical attributes, race cannot. You cannot, by definition, change your race to be a different race or a different culture or a different heritage. You cannot become Korean by changing yourself to look more Korean. You simply cannot, as that is not how transitioning works. Now, to further my point, I thought I'd mention something that Katsun brought up to me on Twitter, which is the fact that transracial is actually a term used when adopting a child of a different race or heritage, which is simply a very different thing than the term has been twisted to mean by people attempting to try and justify changing their physical attributes to look more like a different race, which causes multiple different problems as people are trying to now justify this, and a lot of transphobes especially are saying, why are people getting mad at this if they didn't get mad at trans people, and trying to use it as a point against the trans community, which once again is a way of demeaning the trans community, which is a real way of viewing yourself, a real thing, instead trying to make it seem like those people, by association, are also just like the people that are trying to turn transracial into a real thing. Now, obviously the social media replies to this situation should spell otherwise, and obviously it's been supported by the fact that the only other person to come out as transracial publicly, which was a public speaker, was outed for actually lying about this years ago, and Oli London still cites them as someone that they appreciate for allowing them to come to terms with their identity. It causes multiple different problems when people are actively using people that are lying or making something up or misunderstanding the meaning of race and more, and conflating that to being a real thing in a situation where transgender actually is a real thing and is now being dogged by people that seem to believe that this is a justified reason to go against trans people. I also found a very important article from The Conversation that I feel states some things that actually mean a lot in this whole situation, as it feels like Oli London has severely misconfused the situation and misunderstood what transgender is in comparison to what transracial would be, as obviously there are a few issues with their statement. The article reads, "Race and gender are not built the same. Gender is our internal sense of self, whether that be man, woman, neither, or both. Most people have an idea about their gender at 2 or 3 years old. This may not align with the sex assigned to them at birth. Unlike gender, race presents as categorized, often physical traits that are socially constructed and understood. You can't inherit your gender. This is internal and something individual to you, but you do inherit the social construct of race. There is also much more to one's racial identity than physical appearance. It's also about culture, community, connection, and even trauma. While multicultural communities and LGBTQ+ communities' experiences of discrimination are sometimes compared, it is important to understand that these experiences are different and complex. This is particularly the case, for example, in considering trans people of color and their experiences of both racism and transphobia. People who face discrimination based on their race or cultural background can usually go home to members of their family who understand them. This is often not the case for trans and gender diverse people. Race and gender have very different histories, understandings, experiences, and implications in the face of discrimination. The very idea of being able to transition to a different race discredits trans and gender diverse people's experiences of gender affirmation. It also undermines the importance of cultural connections for many communities. The article also follows up by saying that London, who is non-binary and uses they/them pronouns, has actively chosen a transracial identity, but trans and gender diverse people's decisions to transition, whether that be social, medical, and or legal, is almost always involuntary and out of necessity to live their lives authentically, which is not the same as transracial. Oli London wanted to look more like K-pop star Jimin, so they changed their appearance to look more like K-pop star Jimin. Now, they tried more recently to claim that that wasn't the case, but see that they literally changed their appearance to look like Jimin, I believe the statement is still accurate. And quite simply, this is a situation where Oli London has made up a concept of transracial and tried to make it seem like a plausible outcome because trans people have become more accepted by society. These aren't similar situations, these aren't comparable, and they aren't in any way similar or close situations. While you can see yourself as a different gender mentally, which is obviously a recognized thing by everyone at this point that isn't a discriminatory person, you cannot see yourself as a different race. That is not something that happens and is not something that you can change. Now, I think with that being said, I've said basically everything that needs to be said in regards to this situation. If more information was to come out that would show that Oli London was making a fair point or that their identity was valid, I would be sure to update this video to reflect that. However, at this time, no study I've ever seen has cited any way that you could possibly see yourself as a different race, and simultaneously, whether you saw yourself as a different race or not, you wouldn't be able to change your race, as race pertains to way more than just your physical appearance. It pertains to your culture and a whole bunch more. And with that being said, I hope that this video has educated you or allowed you to understand more in this situation, so that in the future you can understand how this situation should be handled and more about the facts behind this situation, as obviously these situations take quite a while to research and fully understand. With that being said, hope you have enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and it's time to roll the outro. I'd like to take the final segment of this video to give you a genuine heart-to-heart, because I actually do appreciate the fact that you've watched this video the whole way through and listened to what I had to say on a subject that I consider to be very important. I believe that while this video may not be the only source of this information, or the best source of information, I do believe that this video does a good job of concising this information down, and as such, I do appreciate that you gave myself an ear to listen to on this situation, as I hope that this video has actually educated you on this situation or given you the facts that have helped you understand it. I made this video mainly because I noticed a lot of people like Diesel Patches that didn't actually understand the difference and thought that there was actually a similarity between transgender and transracial, which is something I explained to them and they acknowledged, which I do appreciate. With that being said though, I will actually end this video here, as I don't want to drag it on anymore. I feel like I've stated everything important. If you did enjoy this video or feel like it added more important information to this subject, I'll be sure to make more videos just like this one. So feel free to leave a like, subscribe, and feel free to check out my other social media down below. If you'd like to go the extra mile and support me financially, I have a Patreon, Ko-fi, and a join button down below if you'd like to donate there. With that being said, I'll see you next time. Thank you for your time. Peace.
Says she wanna rock with it like me. I'm a stylish guy. Spend a little guap with it like me. We can catch a fly. Says she wanna rock with it like me.